Imagine walking into a kitchen in Los Angeles and seeing what appears to be a royal visit. But something about it feels off. The cameras are rolling, the smiles are perfectly timed, the volunteers are snapping photos. But is it real? Or is it carefully staged for the world to see? That's exactly what happened when Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, alongside Archie and their younger daughter, visited a local LA kitchen. What should have been a heartwarming story of charity and goodwill turned into a whirlwind of questions, whispers, and outright accusations. And it all happened in a matter of minutes. Just 10 minutes, to be exact. 10 minutes that would explode across social media, spark heated debates, and leave everyone asking, what really happened behind the scenes? But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. You've probably seen the pictures. You've read the headlines. But what if everything you think you know about that visit is only half the story? What if the images and videos that flooded the internet were carefully curated to present one narrative, one that hides the chaos, the contradictions, and the very real tension that unfolded that day? In the next hour, we're going to take you inside that LA kitchen, step by step, moment by moment. We'll explore why witnesses were shocked, why some claimed the visit didn't feel authentic, and why even the smallest details, the timing of arrivals, the reactions of volunteers, the fleeting interactions, told a story that most media coverage completely missed. From the moment they arrived, everything was orchestrated down to the last detail. The volunteers were ready. The cameras were in place. Every handshake, every smile, every candid shot was perfectly aligned with the public narrative. But insiders would later tell a different story, one of rushed rehearsals, conflicting instructions, and a pressure to appear flawless. It was a performance, some said. A carefully choreographed PR event disguised as a day of service. And it wasn't just the public or media who noticed. Staff on the ground whispered among themselves, puzzled by what they saw. Did Harry and Meghan really spend meaningful time in that kitchen? Did they genuinely interact with the staff and volunteers, or was it a carefully staged visit designed for cameras? Questions like these don't usually explode into public controversies, but in this case, they did. Social media erupted almost immediately. Clips of the visit circulated with captions questioning the authenticity of the smiles, the timing of the interactions, and even the children's presence. Some viewers noted inconsistencies in the footage. Shadows that didn't align with the sun, angles that suggested repeated takes, and moments that felt unusually polished. The internet became a storm of speculation, with hashtags trending within hours. And yet, amid the chaos, one detail stood out more than any other. Observers couldn't stop talking about how brief the visit actually was. 10 minutes. Not 10 hours, not one afternoon. Just 10 minutes. Enough time for photographs, enough time for video clips, but far too short for any deep, meaningful engagement with the people they were supposedly there to help. Volunteers later described the scene. It all happened so fast. One minute they were greeting everyone. The next minute they were leaving. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel like a genuine visit. It felt like we were part of a show. The media coverage only amplified the tension. Some outlets praised Harry and Meghan for their dedication to charitable work, presenting the visit as a shining example of modern royal philanthropy. Others dug deeper, questioning every detail. How could a family make such a whirlwind stop and still appear genuinely caring? Why were certain angles and moments repeatedly captured while others were ignored? Who decided which footage the public would see? And the most provocative question of all, was the public witnessing reality? Or a perfectly edited, perfectly managed performance designed to protect an image? It's important to understand why this story matters now. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have been under constant scrutiny since stepping back from royal duties. Every public appearance, every media interview, every charitable effort is dissected and debated. Their actions are amplified not just by tabloids, but by billions of social media viewers who are hungry for authenticity. Or at least, what appears authentic. That's why even a single 10-minute visit can spark months of conversation, speculation, and debate. People aren't just asking what happened. They're asking, why did it happen this way? And what does it say about the Royal Harry and Meghan? Inside the kitchen, tensions were quietly building. Staff and volunteers noticed subtle inconsistencies in the visit. Gestures that seemed rehearsed, conversations that felt forced, and moments that didn't align with what they expected from a spontaneous charitable visit. One volunteer told a friend later, "It was like being part of a movie set. Everything was polished, but none of it felt genuine. And the children, well, it's hard to explain, but they didn't seem to fit the way we were told they would." That statement alone would become the spark for countless online debates and articles questioning the visit. And then there were the witnesses who were more direct in their frustration. A few staff members openly criticized the visit on social media, claiming it was rushed, staged, and lacking sincerity. These posts were quickly deleted or moderated, but not before screenshots went viral. People began comparing this event to previous royal visits, noting how different it felt. Where prior visits often spanned hours and involved genuine interaction, this one seemed almost surreal. Like a snapshot of a perfect day frozen in time for cameras to capture. Meanwhile, the public continued to watch, scroll, and debate. Clips of Harry and Meghan washing dishes, handing out meals, and posing for photos circulated online. But each clip carried an undercurrent of suspicion. Viewers asked, were the volunteers genuinely reacting to the family, or were they instructed to act in certain ways? Was the timing of the children's appearances orchestrated to align perfectly with camera angles? Why did some interactions feel rushed, while others were unusually prolonged? Every detail became a piece of the puzzle, but the full picture remained tantalizingly out of reach. This is where the story gets even more intriguing. The LA kitchen, normally focused on community service and volunteer coordination, found itself thrust into a media storm. Their small staff had never expected to be at the center of global speculation. And yet, their first-hand observations became some of the most cited accounts in the controversy. In interviews, staff described moments of genuine confusion. One minute the family was smiling for photos, the next they were gone, leaving volunteers questioning what had just happened. "It was like we were in a dream," one person said. "Everything looked perfect, but the timing didn't make sense. Something felt off." So what does all of this mean? Why are people talking about a 10-minute visit months after it happened? Because it taps into a much larger narrative about image, authenticity, and control. Harry and Meghan are more than just public figures. They are symbols. Every action they take is scrutinized for meaning, every appearance dissected for intent. A single, highly publicized visit becomes a lens through which millions of people judge their authenticity, their priorities, and even their connection to the royal legacy. And in this case, the visit to the LA kitchen raised questions that go far beyond the kitchen itself. And that's where we begin our journey. Over the next hour, we'll take you through every moment of that visit, exploring the contradictions, the chaos, and the controversies. We'll hear from witnesses, insiders, and media experts. We'll analyze the footage, the photos, and the public reactions. And we'll explore the questions that no one seems willing to answer directly. Was the visit genuine? Was it staged? And what does it tell us about the carefully curated world of Harry and Meghan? But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The clock was ticking. 10 minutes. That's all the world would see. 10 minutes to make an impression. 10 minutes to convince cameras, volunteers, and social media watchers that this was a genuine act of service. And yet, from the moment Harry and Meghan's black SUVs rolled into the parking lot of the LA kitchen, something about the scene felt different. Did anyone expect a royal family to appear in the middle of a local charity event? Perhaps, but the level of coordination that went into this arrival was immediately apparent. Security was tight, more so than what the staff had anticipated. Volunteers were asked to assemble in specific spots. Cameras were set up in exact angles. Every detail, from lighting to backdrop, seemed pre-planned. And while everyone tried to appear casual, the tension in the air was palpable. One volunteer would later describe the moment the SUVs stopped. "We were all excited, of course. But there was this pause. Like a weird hush fell over the room. It didn't feel natural. Usually, there's chatter, laughter, energy. This felt controlled, staged." The words staged and controlled would echo across social media, becoming the first sparks of the online storm. The family stepped out. Harry led the way, smiling, waving, exuding the casual charm that many have come to associate with him. Meghan followed, poised and elegant, with Archie and their younger daughter close behind. The team tried to make it look spontaneous, But every observer noticed the synchronicity. The waves were timed, the steps matched the camera angles, and the children were positioned in ways that maximized visibility. The sequence was almost cinematic, almost too perfect. Inside, the kitchen was buzzing, but not with the usual energy. Staff and volunteers exchanged glances. Questions whispered behind masks. Did they practice this? Is this really 10 minutes? Are we being filmed for something else? The air was thick with curiosity and uncertainty. And then it began. The photographs, the video clips, every smile and handshake was captured from multiple angles. Harry washed a few dishes, Meghan handed out meal trays. On the surface, it looked genuine, but the timing was peculiar. Each interaction lasted just long enough for cameras to catch it. Too brief to seem natural, yet perfectly long enough to create a montage of kindness for the outside world. It was during these moments that subtle inconsistencies started to emerge. Some volunteers noticed gestures repeated multiple times, almost like reruns. A plate handed twice, a handshake repeated, a wave retaken from a slightly different angle. One volunteer whispered, "It felt like being part of a rehearsal, like we were extras on a set, not participants in a real visit." That statement, innocuous as it seemed at the time, would later be shared online, fueling speculation and doubt. The children were present, as expected, but their movements were carefully monitored. They smiled for the cameras, held their positions, and moved along a predetermined path. Nothing seemed spontaneous. Observers began to wonder, how much of this was genuine family interaction, and how much was orchestrated for appearance? Every smile, every glance, every movement seemed meticulously choreographed. As the minutes ticked by, volunteers tried to make sense of it. Some embraced the moment as a once-in-a-lifetime experience, basking in the presence of a royal family. Others, however, could not shake a growing sense of unease. The visit felt rushed, the interactions felt scripted, and the children's presence, while endearing, felt carefully arranged to maximize appeal. Social media had already started to ignite. Clips taken by volunteers and staff appeared online, and people began dissecting every frame. Viewers noticed what insiders had quietly whispered. Slight discrepancies in lighting, repeated gestures, and interactions that seemed too perfect to be spontaneous. Online discussions erupted. Was this a 10-minute PR stunt? Was the public being shown a polished version of reality? Or was there something more happening behind the cameras? The pressure to maintain composure was not lost on Harry and Meghan. Staff observed their subtle glances and micro-expressions, moments of tension that the cameras did not fully capture. One insider later recounted, Harry kept checking his watch, Meghan kept scanning the room, and the kids? Well, the kids were moving exactly where they were supposed to. Everything was timed. Despite all appearances, something unexpected happened next. A minor slip, unnoticed by the media but noted by staff, set off a chain reaction of suspicion. A volunteer, caught off guard by the flow of the event, accidentally disrupted the choreography, bumping into a tray, creating a minor distraction. Harry reacted instantly, a quick glance and a subtle correction that suggested deep familiarity with the planned sequence. Meghan, meanwhile, continued forward with precision, ensuring the cameras didn't capture the small disruption. In 10 minutes, such a small moment could have gone unnoticed, but in this case, it was magnified by volunteers' memories and later shared accounts. Within hours, the online conversation exploded. Clips were replayed, screenshots circulated, and hashtags questioning the authenticity of the visit began trending. Many viewers expressed admiration for the family's charitable work. Others voiced skepticism, citing the precise choreography, the timing of the children, and the polished media presentation. The tension between admiration and doubt would define the narrative around this 10-minute visit. Meanwhile, insiders quietly discussed another unusual aspect, the volunteers' reactions. Staff reported subtle cues of discomfort and confusion. Some whispered questions about authenticity, while others openly admitted that the rapid pacing of the visit left them bewildered. Observers began to ask, if this was a genuine act of service, why did it feel rushed? Why did moments of connection seem brief and calculated? And most provocatively, what was being hidden in the gaps between the staged smiles and the camera-ready gestures? By the time the family departed, The visit had lasted exactly 10 minutes. 10 minutes that would ignite global debate, spark accusations of staging, and leave volunteers wondering whether they had witnessed authenticity or performance. The footage would circulate for weeks, analyzed frame by frame, as journalists and social media users alike tried to answer the same question. Was this a real visit or an illusion? And just when it seemed the story could not become any more complicated, a source close to the kitchen revealed something extraordinary. Something about the timing of arrivals, the coordination of volunteers, and the sequence of interactions suggested there was more to the visit than anyone had imagined. The details, initially hidden behind smiles and camera angles, hinted at a level of planning that went beyond ordinary PR. But what came next? The revelations that would shock insiders, media outlets, and the public alike would make everyone question everything they thought they knew about this 10-minute visit. Most people only saw the polished 10 minutes, the smiles, the dishes, the neatly arranged moments for cameras. But behind the scenes, the reality was far more complicated. In a small kitchen tucked away in Los Angeles, staff and volunteers were caught between excitement and confusion. Some were thrilled at the once-in-a-lifetime chance to meet royalty. Others quietly questioned why everything felt staged. The first moments after the family's arrival set the tone. Volunteers were instructed to position themselves in specific areas, some standing near counters, others lining the walls, all under the watchful eyes of camera operators. One staff member later recounted, "It felt like being on a movie set, not a community service event." There was this constant sense that we were performing as much as they were. That observation would later become a cornerstone of media commentary, cited as evidence that the visit may have been more about image than service. Security presence was heavier than anticipated. Black SUVs lined the entrance, and bodyguards moved quietly but assertively, subtly guiding volunteers and staff alike. The family schedule was tightly controlled. Every step, every interaction, appeared to be mapped out in advance. Observers noted that Harry and Meghan had barely a moment to breathe before being ushered to the next spot. It was precise, almost too precise, a volunteer said. There was no room for spontaneity, no chance to connect naturally with anyone. Staff began noticing small inconsistencies. Volunteers recalled gestures being repeated multiple times, handshakes, plate handoffs, even smiles. Some interactions seemed to restart after a quick camera reset. A photographer later revealed, "I noticed Harry doing the same wave twice." Meghan repeated a gesture with a tray. "I started questioning if we were capturing authenticity or something rehearsed." That question, once whispered in the kitchen, would spread online and become a focal point for viewers and critics. Even the children's movements were notable. Observers mentioned that they were guided with subtle hand gestures and careful positioning, ensuring they were visible at key moments. Nothing about their behavior seemed spontaneous. Everything was deliberate. Volunteers later admitted that it was hard to tell whether the kids were genuinely reacting to their environment or being positioned for the cameras. While many praised the children's poise and charm, others found the meticulous planning unsettling. Conversations behind the scenes hinted at internal tension. Staff quietly debated the brevity of the visit. 10 minutes, they noted, was hardly enough time for meaningful engagement. One volunteer said, "We barely had time to introduce ourselves before they were moving on. It felt like a photo opportunity more than a charitable effort." That sense of rush would soon fuel speculation about the authenticity of the entire event. But it wasn't just timing that raised eyebrows. Observers also noted the highly choreographed nature of the interactions. Plates were handed at exact moments. Volunteers were encouraged to smile and nod at specific cues. Even seemingly casual gestures, like leaning in for a handshake or adjusting a meal tray, were precisely timed. One volunteer admitted, "It was like being in a live commercial. Everything looked perfect, but it didn't feel real." Then came the moments that truly sparked debate. During the visit, a few minor mishaps occurred. A plate was slightly misaligned. A volunteer tripped on the edge of a counter. A tray shifted unexpectedly. These small errors were quickly corrected, but the corrections were almost too seamless. Observers later noted that Harry and Meghan responded in ways that suggested familiarity with every possible contingency. They knew exactly what to do, one staff member said. It was impressive, but also a little unsettling. As the visit progressed, subtle behavioral patterns became noticeable. Harry appeared to be scanning the room frequently, checking both the volunteers and the cameras. Meghan maintained her poised composure, ensuring that each gesture aligned with the expected shot. Volunteers described a sense of hyper-awareness that suggested the visit was being monitored closely, down to the smallest detail. "It felt like we were on a tightrope," one insider said. Every movement mattered, and everyone was watching. The volunteers' confusion deepened when some interactions repeated in slightly different sequences. A handshake, a wave, a smile. These small gestures seemed to occur more than once, almost like rehearsed takes. Staff began to whisper among themselves. "Are we seeing the same moments again? Or is this just the way it's supposed to look on camera?" By the end of the 10 minutes, those whispers had grown louder, forming a quiet chorus of skepticism. Social media amplified these observations rapidly. Clips showing repeated gestures and polished interactions were shared online, often accompanied by captions questioning the visit's authenticity. Fans and critics alike debated whether the family had genuinely engaged with the staff or if they were performing a carefully curated narrative. Journalists picked up the story, digging into footage and interviewing witnesses who described what they had seen. The narrative quickly shifted from a charitable visit to a controversy about performance versus reality. Meanwhile, the kitchen staff faced an unusual dilemma. They were proud to host the royal family, yet uncomfortable with the way the visit had unfolded. Their observations, small inconsistencies, rehearsed movements, and strict timing, clashed with the image being projected to the world. Staff were unsure whether to speak publicly, fearing backlash or being labeled as critics. But the experience left a lasting impression, one that would fuel speculation for months to come. And then there were the subtle cues from Harry and Meghan themselves. Observers noted quick glances exchanged between the couple, slight nods, and micro-adjustments that seemed to indicate they were following a pre-planned sequence. Volunteers described these moments as fleeting but telling, revealing the degree of orchestration behind the visit. One insider said, "It was as if they were running a tight ship, making sure nothing went off script. And we were all part of that script, whether we liked it or not." Even the media setup played a role in shaping the narrative. Cameras captured only selected angles, highlighting the polished moments and omitting minor disruptions. Volunteers noticed how footage was directed, with repeated takes for key shots. One photographer confided, "The cameras only showed what they wanted the world to see. Anything else, the small mistakes, the rushed interactions, was invisible to the public." This revelation would later fuel accusations that the visit was designed more for optics than for genuine engagement. By the end of the 10 minutes, staff were left with mixed emotions. Awe at the family's presence, pride at hosting royalty, and lingering skepticism about the authenticity of what they had witnessed. The juxtaposition of polished presentation and subtle behind-the-scenes tension created a story that was far more complex than any 10-minute clip could capture. And just when it seemed the visit was over, a small but critical detail emerged, one that the staff hadn't noticed at the time but would later become central to the controversy. A minor discrepancy in timing suggested that there may have been a hidden agenda or secret coordination behind the visit, something that would not be revealed until later investigations. What was uncovered next would leave insiders stunned, journalists scrambling, and the public questioning everything they had seen. When the royal family left the kitchen, the cameras stopped rolling, and the volunteers could finally exhale. Or so they thought. Behind the smiles and polite gestures, conversations quickly turned to confusion and speculation. Some volunteers were thrilled, feeling honored to be part of a historic visit. Others, however, couldn't shake a growing unease that had been simmering from the moment the SUVs pulled in. It started quietly. In small groups, whispers circulated. Did anyone else notice how quick it all was? It felt like we were part of a scene, not a real visit. Why did the kids move exactly where they were supposed to? Nothing seemed spontaneous. These were not dramatic accusations. They were observations, subtle at first, but increasingly difficult to ignore. Volunteers who had spent years in charitable service began noticing details that didn't add up. One volunteer later recounted, "I've seen countless celebrities come through, but this was different. Usually, people take time to talk to volunteers, ask questions, laugh, engage. Here, everything was rushed. There was a script, a flow, and we were just background. That remark, shared privately at the time, would eventually become public and spark heated debates across social media. Suddenly, people weren't just admiring the royal visit, they were questioning its authenticity. The first social media posts appeared within hours. Volunteers and staff shared photos, often praising the family, but adding subtle hints of skepticism. Some noted repeated gestures or awkward pauses in the footage. Others pointed out the sheer brevity of the visit, emphasizing how little real interaction could happen in just 10 minutes. One tweet read, "The smiles were perfect, the timing flawless, but did anyone really see them connecting with us?" Within minutes, that post went viral. Journalists quickly picked up the story. Initial coverage praised the family for their charitable efforts, presenting the visit as a positive public relations success. But as insiders began speaking out, the narrative shifted. Interviews with volunteers revealed contradictions between the polished media clips and the experiences of those on the ground. Reporters dug deeper, asking questions about the planning, timing, and coordination. Footage that had seemed innocuous suddenly gained new significance under scrutiny. Some volunteers even admitted to being instructed on where to stand, how to react, and when to smile. One insider said, "We weren't asked to be natural. We were asked to be presentable, visible, and camera-ready. That's not how charity normally works." It was rehearsed, like a production. Those statements fueled an online firestorm. Fans and critics alike debated whether the family had truly engaged in service or whether it was a perfectly orchestrated performance designed for public consumption. Observers noticed small inconsistencies in the visit. Plates were handed twice, gestures repeated, interactions that seemed natural in one frame appeared slightly off in another. Volunteers began comparing notes, pointing out the differences they had observed firsthand. One volunteer told a journalist, "You don't notice it until you look back at the footage. Things repeat. Movements are slightly too perfect. Even the kids, every step seems guided." Social media users pounced on these observations, analyzing videos frame by frame and questioning whether the visit had been staged. The brevity of the visit became another focal point. 10 minutes is enough for photos, enough for brief interactions, but not enough to truly engage with staff and volunteers. Several insiders described a sense of being rushed, as if the visit were timed like a commercial rather than a charitable effort. "It's like a show," one volunteer admitted. "You feel part of something important, but it's over before it even begins." That sentiment quickly spread online, with critics claiming the visit prioritized optics over authenticity. Then came the first direct criticisms. Volunteers who felt frustrated began speaking openly to reporters. They highlighted what they perceived as inconsistencies, repeated gestures, perfectly timed camera angles, and interactions that seemed planned rather than spontaneous. Some even mentioned the children, noting that while their presence was charming, it appeared carefully orchestrated to maximize media appeal. These accounts became central to early coverage questioning the visit's authenticity. Social media users began dissecting the footage, creating side-by-side comparisons of repeated gestures and poses. Analysts noted small differences between angles, suggesting that multiple takes had been captured for the best possible outcome. The public conversation shifted. The visit was no longer just a feel-good story. It had become a case study in image management, timing, and public perception. Volunteer interviews also revealed moments of tension behind the scenes. Staff described quick glances exchanged between Harry and Meghan, subtle nods and adjustments that indicated the visit was tightly controlled. Observers began to wonder if the family was responding to cues they couldn't see, coordinating every movement to maintain the polished image. One insider said, "You could feel the pressure in the room. Everyone was aware that cameras were capturing every second. There was no room for natural interactions." By the end of the day, volunteers' accounts had begun to shape the narrative. Their observations, repeated gestures, meticulous timing, controlled movements, provided the first tangible evidence that the visit might not have been entirely spontaneous. Journalists and social media users alike began questioning whether the 10-minute visit had been authentic or a carefully staged performance. And then came the most striking revelation. Some volunteers noticed discrepancies between what they were told before the visit and what actually occurred. Instructions about positioning, timing, and interactions differed from the reality on the ground. These inconsistencies raised a new level of suspicion. Had the public been shown only what organizers wanted them to see? And if so, what was being hidden in those carefully curated 10 minutes? The first public reactions began to trickle in. Fans defended the family, praising their charitable work and questioning whether volunteers were exaggerating. Critics argued that the visit had been orchestrated for media attention, using carefully timed gestures and camera-ready moments to create a polished narrative. The tension between supporters and skeptics grew online, setting the stage for the controversy to escalate. And as insiders began sharing more details, small gestures repeated, interactions that seemed too polished, moments of subtle tension, the story took on a new dimension. It was no longer just about a 10-minute visit. It was about authenticity, image, and control. Every smile, every wave, every glance now carried meaning. The volunteers' accounts had ignited a chain reaction that would keep the story alive in the media for weeks. But just when it seemed the story had reached its peak, a new piece of information surfaced. Something even the volunteers hadn't noticed at the time. This detail would make journalists, insiders, and the public question everything they thought they knew about the visit, setting the stage for revelations that no one saw coming. It started quietly, almost innocuously. A few volunteer photos posted on social media, brief captions praising the visit but hinting at something unusual, quickly caught the attention of local bloggers. Within hours, the story had escalated beyond the LA kitchen walls, jumping to national media outlets. What should have been a feel-good segment of charitable work had morphed into a full-blown controversy. The first wave of coverage focused on admiration. Headlines praised the royal family for their commitment to community service, highlighting how they washed dishes, handed out meals, and interacted with volunteers. On the surface, it looked like a standard charitable event. But journalists who dug deeper began to notice subtle inconsistencies in the footage, repeated gestures, unusually timed interactions, and camera angles that suggested deliberate staging. Social media reacted almost immediately. Fans and critics alike began dissecting every frame. Clips of Harry and Meghan smiling, interacting with volunteers, or helping with meal preparation were analyzed in extreme detail. Questions started to emerge. Were the gestures authentic? Were the interactions genuinely spontaneous? Was the brevity of the visit, just 10 minutes, enough to create meaningful impact? Hashtags questioning the authenticity of the visit began trending within hours. Some media outlets took a skeptical tone. Articles highlighted volunteer accounts describing the visit as rehearsed or scripted. Observers noted that the children were positioned in ways that maximized visibility on camera. Minor mishaps, such as repeated plate handoffs and adjusted gestures, were presented as evidence that the visit may have been more about optics than genuine engagement. Critics framed the 10-minute visit as a polished PR performance, executed with precision but lacking authenticity. Meanwhile, supporters of the family defended the visit vigorously. They emphasized that 10 minutes, while brief, was still a meaningful contribution. They praised the royal couple's dedication to charitable causes and dismissed critiques as overanalysis. Not everything needs to be scrutinized to death, one supporter wrote. They showed up, they helped, and that's what matters. Yet even in these defenses, subtle doubts lingered. Questions about timing, choreography, and the polished nature of the visit persisted. Journalists began reaching out to insiders, attempting to reconcile the polished public image with volunteer testimonies. Reports emerged of micro-adjustments, repeated gestures, and pre-planned camera shots. Staff described subtle cues exchanged between the couple to maintain a perfect sequence. It felt like a tightrope act, one insider admitted. Every movement mattered, and we were all part of it. It didn't feel natural. These accounts added fuel to the growing fire, generating headlines that questioned the very authenticity of the visit. The public debate escalated rapidly. Analysis videos popped up on YouTube, comparing repeated gestures and camera angles. Twitter threads went viral, dissecting every interaction and discussing whether the visit had been staged. People debated not just the family's actions, but the psychology behind public appearances, how image, perception, and optics shape the way events are remembered. Each 10-minute clip became a symbol of scrutiny, intensifying the narrative. As the media frenzy grew, the LA kitchen itself found itself at the center of global attention. Staff who had initially been hesitant to speak publicly were now approached by journalists, bloggers, and online commentators. The volunteers' accounts, previously whispered, were suddenly amplified across every major platform. Statements about repeated gestures, orchestrated positioning, and brief interactions became headlines. The controversy had outgrown its origin, turning a local charitable visit into a worldwide debate. The frenzy also revealed tensions among volunteers. Some felt proud and grateful to host the royal family, while others were frustrated that the experience had been so brief and structured. The juxtaposition of admiration and skepticism created a complex dynamic, with volunteers both defending and questioning the visit at the same time. "We all saw the same 10 minutes, but we experienced them differently," one insider explained. "Some of us left feeling inspired. Others left feeling like we'd just participated in a photo shoot." Media coverage began analyzing even the smallest details. Observers questioned the timing of arrivals, the sequence of events, and the placement of children and volunteers. They compared footage from multiple angles, highlighting minor discrepancies that reinforced the perception of orchestration. The narrative shifted from a simple visit to a multi-layered investigation into image, presentation, and authenticity. Critics argued that the brief nature of the visit raised deeper questions about intent. 10 minutes, they claimed, is insufficient to meaningfully engage with volunteers or make a substantial contribution. Some suggested that the visit was more about projecting a polished image to the public than about genuine service. Supporters countered that even small gestures matter, and that the family's presence inspired volunteers and brought attention to important causes. The debate polarized public opinion, making the visit a lightning rod for discussion. Amid the chaos, insider revelations continued to emerge. Volunteers reported micro-adjustments by the royal couple, subtle cues to maintain sequence, and repeated takes of certain gestures. These behind-the-scenes details suggested a level of planning that went far beyond ordinary charitable work. Journalists began framing the visit as a case study in image management, exploring the intersection of public perception, media control, and authenticity. And yet, despite the scrutiny, a key detail remained obscured, a critical discrepancy in timing and coordination that even the most diligent analysts had not noticed at first. This detail, hidden in plain sight, would soon become central to the unfolding story. It promised to challenge everything the public thought they knew about the visit, turning what seemed like a simple 10-minute event into a complex puzzle of image, optics, and intention. As the media storm reached its peak, the story of the LA kitchen visit was no longer just a local news item. It had become an international talking point. Every gesture, every smile, every fleeting interaction was dissected, debated, and reinterpreted. And just when it seemed the frenzy might die down, a new revelation emerged, one that insiders had quietly noticed but hadn't yet revealed. This revelation would shift the conversation once again, taking the story in a direction no one anticipated. What came next would not only shock volunteers and insiders, but also reignite the global conversation about authenticity, optics, and the carefully curated world of public appearances. On the surface, the royal family's visit lasted 10 minutes, a brief, seemingly ordinary event captured in polished clips and shared widely online. But behind the scenes, the timeline told a different story. Staff and volunteers began noticing subtle discrepancies in the order of events, the pacing of interactions, and the coordination of camera angles. What appeared as a simple 10-minute visit was anything but. It started with the volunteers' observations. One staff member recounted that when reviewing the footage later, some moments didn't line up with what we actually experienced. Plates were handed out before certain greetings, gestures repeated in ways we didn't remember. It was confusing, like time was stretched or rearranged. That insight, minor as it seemed, became a cornerstone for speculation. How could such a short visit contain inconsistencies that suggested multiple sequences and rehearsals? Journalists quickly picked up on these observations. Media analysts compared the publicly released clips with raw footage leaked from behind the scenes. The result was startling. Several moments appeared to have been captured more than once, edited together to present a seamless narrative. Some gestures were repeated, smiles were slightly altered, and even the children's positions appeared adjusted between takes. The analysis fueled accusations that the 10-minute visit had been orchestrated for maximum visual impact rather than genuine engagement. Meanwhile, volunteers began comparing their personal memories with the footage. The result was puzzling. One volunteer described it as a mind-bending experience. They recalled a greeting occurring after a handshake, while the footage showed the opposite. Another noted that volunteers seemed to appear and disappear from certain shots, as if timing and placement had been adjusted after the fact. These inconsistencies were subtle, but together, they painted a picture of a visit that had been meticulously managed behind the scenes. Even the children's presence drew attention. Volunteers noted that their movements, while natural in some moments, appeared carefully guided in others. Certain clips showed them engaging in an activity for only a few seconds, then repositioned for another shot. Observers began questioning whether the public had seen a continuous 10-minute visit or a carefully edited compilation designed to appear seamless. The timing of arrivals and departures was another point of contention. Security logs, volunteer schedules, and vehicle movement records suggested that the family's presence in the kitchen may have been even shorter than reported, or that multiple sequences had been recorded to create the illusion of a longer visit. Some journalists theorized that the 10 minutes reported publicly could have included a combination of rehearsed and real interactions, edited together to craft a polished final product. Volunteers' reactions to the timing were telling. One insider admitted, "We barely had time to engage naturally. Everything happened so quickly that we were left wondering if we had actually interacted with them or just performed for the cameras." Another noted that certain gestures felt repeated or rehearsed, further fueling suspicion that the visit was choreographed. These accounts, when combined with the media footage, created a growing narrative of a highly managed event. Then came a more surprising discovery. A staff member revealed that before the official 10-minute visit, there had been private moments not captured by media, brief rehearsals, subtle positioning, and timing checks. These behind-the-scenes actions, though invisible to the public, provided crucial context. They suggested that what the world saw as spontaneous interaction was actually the product of careful preparation. "We didn't notice it at the time," one insider explained. "But when you look back, it's clear there was a lot going on before we even thought the visit began." The timeline discrepancies were further complicated by the release of multiple media clips. Some outlets presented sequences in slightly different orders, causing confusion about the actual flow of events. Analysts noted that subtle differences in gestures, lighting, and volunteer placement indicated that footage had been compiled from multiple takes. Viewers were left questioning which moments were authentic and which were edited for presentation. Amid this scrutiny, the public debate intensified. Critics argued that the timeline revealed a carefully orchestrated PR event, rather than a genuine charitable visit. Supporters countered that even rehearsed interactions could still provide meaningful engagement and that the family's presence brought attention to an important cause. Yet the questions persisted. Why repeat gestures? Why adjust children's positions? Why create a timeline that didn't match real-time interactions? Insiders added another layer to the story. Some volunteers revealed that certain instructions had been given before the visit: where to stand, how to react, and when to smile. It was subtle, but intentional, one staff member explained. "We weren't aware of it at the time, but it shaped the experience in ways that only became obvious later." These revelations suggested a level of coordination that went beyond ordinary event planning. The hidden timeline also raised ethical questions about media presentation. By compiling footage from multiple sequences into a 10-minute narrative, the visit appeared seamless and authentic to viewers, even if the reality was more complex. This discrepancy sparked debates about transparency, media manipulation, and the responsibility of public figures in portraying authenticity. And yet, despite all this analysis, one mystery remained: a critical detail in the timing that even volunteers and journalists had overlooked. A seemingly minor sequence. A gesture, a pause, or a glance, hinted at something deeper, a hidden element that would later challenge the public's understanding of the visit. This hidden timeline would become a central piece of the unfolding story, raising questions that no one had anticipated. As media coverage expanded and volunteers' accounts circulated online, the world began to see the 10-minute visit in a new light. What appeared simple and polished was revealed to be layered, orchestrated, and carefully curated. And as investigators, journalists, and the public continued to dissect the footage, the story was far from over. Because just when it seemed that every detail had been examined, the next revelation would shake insiders, confound media analysts, and push the global conversation about authenticity and perception to a new level. Almost immediately after the clips from the LA kitchen visit went public, an unexpected controversy emerged. One that would overshadow even the choreography and timing issues. Volunteers and insiders began whispering about the youngest child, Lilibet. Something about her appearance, behavior, and interactions during the visit didn't align with public records or media portrayals. The question soon spread like wildfire online. Could Lilibet really be the age the family claimed? The initial whispers came from subtle observations. Volunteers noted that Lilibet displayed behaviors far more advanced than expected for her reported age. Her posture, speech, and engagement with staff suggested maturity beyond the typical developmental stage. Some staff described her as unusually composed. Another said she moved with confidence and awareness far beyond her years. These observations, innocent at first, quickly became the foundation for public speculation. Media analysts and social media users jumped on the story. Clips of Lilibet smiling for the camera, walking confidently alongside her brother, and participating in the service were replayed endlessly. Viewers dissected every frame, comparing her apparent age to previously released photos and videos. The discussion intensified. Some suggested that she was much older than reported, claiming the public had been misled. Others dismissed the theory as overanalysis, emphasizing that children develop at different rates. But the volunteers' accounts added fuel to the fire. One insider noted that Lilibet's attention span and awareness during the visit were unusually high. She knew exactly when to smile, when to wave, and when to step aside for the cameras, the staff member explained. It was impressive, but it also felt rehearsed, or at least guided. That comment, while subtle, would become one of the earliest sparks of the online Lilibet is older debate. Parents and child development experts soon weighed in, analyzing footage for signs of age and developmental milestones. Some noted advanced motor skills and social awareness inconsistent with the stated age of 7. Others pointed out that she appeared taller, more coordinated, and more expressive than expected. Even casual viewers began speculating. Could the child shown in the 10-minute visit really be the Lilibet everyone thought they knew? The controversy grew as comparisons were made to archived media. Photos of the family from public appearances suggested discrepancies in growth patterns, facial features, and body language. Analysts created timelines, measuring height, gestures, and interactions, questioning the official narrative. Headlines began to appear. Lilibet's age under scrutiny. Royal visit sparks questions about youngest child. And is Lilibet really 7? The controversy now extended far beyond the LA kitchen and into global discussion forums. Volunteers recalled moments during the visit that seemed to support these speculations. Lilibet reportedly understood instructions quickly, followed subtle cues from her parents, and maintained poise under constant observation, traits more common in older children. Staff admitted they had never seen a child her reported age demonstrate such awareness during a fast-paced event. Even the other children present, including Archie, were perceived as more naturally spontaneous in contrast. Social media exploded with side-by-side comparisons. Users analyzed Lilibet's facial expressions, movements, and interaction style, claiming inconsistencies with the stated age. Some began theorizing about hidden motives, wondering if the family intentionally portrayed her as younger for public perception. Others questioned the ethics of portraying children differently from reality for media narratives. The debate was fierce, and every clip, every photo, every minor gesture fueled speculation. Meanwhile, insiders reported a heightened sense of awareness from the family during the visit, especially regarding Lilibet. Volunteers noticed that both parents closely monitored her positioning, gestures, and visibility in front of the cameras. Some staff interpreted this as normal parental attention, while others suspected it was part of a larger effort to maintain a specific narrative. These observations added complexity to the unfolding story. Was Lilibet's presentation natural, guided, or intentionally crafted? Journalists began interviewing child development specialists, who weighed in on the likelihood of the public portrayal matching the reported age. While some experts noted that children can exhibit maturity beyond their years, others agreed that certain behaviors observed were unusual for a 7-year-old. Media coverage soon framed the visit as not just a charitable event, but a potential case study in perception, presentation, and public storytelling. The controversy reached new heights when leaked behind-the-scenes footage showed Lilibet in interactions not included in the main 10-minute clips. In these moments, she appeared confident, articulate, and composed, responding precisely to cues from her parents and subtly directing her own movements. Observers noted that these behaviors were atypical for a child of her stated age, sparking further discussion about the accuracy of public claims. The Lilibet controversy also fueled broader discussions about the family's approach to media and public appearances. Critics argued that portraying her as younger than she might be was a strategic choice, aimed at enhancing the family's public image or generating sympathy. Supporters countered that children grow at different rates, and that no deception was intended. Yet the debate persisted, dividing audiences across social media, traditional media, and public forums. And just when it seemed the controversy had peaked, a new piece of insider information emerged. A volunteer revealed that during a brief, unscripted moment, Lilibet demonstrated knowledge of her surroundings and interactions that would be unusual for a child of 7. This revelation promised to reignite the debate, suggesting that even volunteers, staff, and media analysts had yet to see the full picture. As discussions intensified, it became clear the 10-minute visit had unveiled more than a charitable effort. It had exposed a web of speculation, timing inconsistencies, and now, questions about the youngest child. What seemed simple on the surface was far more complex underneath. The next revelation would shake insiders, fuel media analysis, and challenge the public's perception of both the family and the carefully curated narrative presented in that 10-minute visit. By now, the 10-minute LA kitchen visit had become more than just a charitable appearance. It had transformed into a lightning rod for controversy, and the volunteers who had been present found themselves at the center of an escalating story. What started as casual whispers behind the counters became deliberate leaks, as insiders felt compelled to share their experiences with journalists, bloggers, and social media. The first leaks were subtle, almost innocuous. A volunteer shared a short clip on a private social media account, accompanied by a caption noting how tight and rehearsed the visit felt. Another described their surprise at how quickly the interactions occurred. We barely had time to greet them before they moved on. Everything felt timed, like a production. These early posts were meant to be private reflections, but within hours they were reshared, dissected, and analyzed. As more volunteers spoke out, the narrative intensified. Reports began to emerge that the visit had been meticulously coordinated. Gestures were repeated, volunteers were directed to specific spots, and the children's movements appeared guided at every turn. Observers noted that what was presented as spontaneous kindness was actually highly managed. It felt like we were part of a scene, one insider admitted. Not a real visit, but a performance. The leaks quickly caught the attention of media outlets. Journalists contacted volunteers for interviews, and their accounts began shaping headlines. Stories highlighted the discrepancies between what the public had seen and what staff had actually experienced. Some outlets framed it as an orchestrated PR event, while others balanced the narrative with admiration for the family's charitable intentions. Regardless of tone, the leaks made one thing clear. The 10-minute visit was far more complex than anyone realized. Social media erupted. Clips and screenshots from volunteers circulated widely, sparking debates about authenticity, timing, and presentation. Fans defended the family, emphasizing that even brief acts of service were meaningful. Critics countered, arguing that the visit prioritized optics over genuine engagement. The discussion extended far beyond the kitchen itself, engaging a global audience in a heated conversation about media, perception, and trust. One of the most shocking leaks involved the children. Volunteers revealed details about how Lilibet and Archie were positioned, how their gestures were subtly guided, and how their movements were timed with camera angles. While the public had seen polished clips of adorable smiles and carefully coordinated steps, insiders suggested that there had been far more orchestration behind the scenes than anyone suspected. Observers began questioning whether the youngest child's appearance and behavior matched the age the family had stated. The Lilibet controversy exploded online, sparking intense debate and speculation. Volunteers also described moments when minor disruptions occurred. A tray shifted, a volunteer moved slightly out of position, or a gesture was mistimed. And yet, Harry and Meghan adapted seamlessly. One insider remarked, "They knew exactly what to do in every moment." It was impressive, but also unnerving, almost as if nothing was left to chance. These behind-the-scenes observations fueled speculation that the visit had been rehearsed in detail, contradicting the public narrative of a spontaneous charitable effort. The leaks didn't stop there. Some volunteers shared accounts of instructions they had received before the visit: where to stand, when to smile, how to interact with the children. While seemingly minor, these directives added to the perception of a highly curated event. Observers began analyzing how every gesture, movement, and interaction was captured in media footage, further suggesting that the 10-minute visit was more performance than participation. As the story gained traction, the media began connecting the leaks to broader questions about authenticity and public perception. Analysts discussed how the family's meticulous management of the visit, combined with volunteer accounts, created a narrative that differed significantly from the polished clips presented to the public. The visit was no longer just about charity. It was about image, control, and the careful construction of public appearances. Even minor details became points of scrutiny. Observers noticed repeated hand gestures, multiple takes of certain actions, and precise coordination of children's movements. Volunteers described the intense attention to timing, suggesting that every interaction was part of a carefully executed sequence. Media coverage emphasized that what the public had seen was only a fraction of the reality experienced by those present, sparking debates about transparency and trust. The leaks also revealed the emotional impact on volunteers. Some expressed pride at hosting the royal family, while others felt uneasy about participating in a visit that seemed rehearsed. "We wanted to enjoy the moment," one insider explained, "but it felt like we were part of a controlled narrative, and that left a strange feeling. Something didn't feel genuine, even though we were excited to be there." These mixed emotions became a recurring theme in subsequent reports and online discussions. And just when it seemed the leaks had revealed everything, a volunteer shared the most startling detail yet. In a brief, unscripted moment during the visit, a sequence occurred that contradicted the polished public footage, an interaction between the children and staff that raised new questions about timing, authenticity, and what had been captured on camera. This revelation reignited media scrutiny and social media speculation, leaving everyone wondering if the 10-minute visit had been far more complex than anyone realized. The insider accounts, combined with the leaks and media analysis, set the stage for a larger controversy. The 10-minute visit, once celebrated as a feel-good story, had become a case study in timing, choreography, and public perception. And as the narrative continued to unfold, the next revelation promised to push the story even further into global headlines. Challenging assumptions, sparking debate, and leaving audiences questioning everything they thought they knew about the royal family's visit after the media frenzy began, attention shifted from the volunteers to the kitchen staff themselves, the people who had witnessed the visit up close, behind the cameras, and outside the polished public view. Their stories added a new layer of insight, exposing details that no one had anticipated and further fueling speculation about the 10-minute visit. The first interviews revealed a mix of awe and disbelief. Many staff members described being starstruck at seeing Harry, Meghan, Archie, and Lilibet walk into the kitchen. They spoke of the meticulous preparation, the unexpected security measures, and the palpable tension that filled the room as cameras rolled. "It felt like we were on a film set," one staffer admitted. Every move, every gesture was being watched and guided, and we were just background extras in the scene. The staff described how even the smallest actions were choreographed. Plates were handed at precise moments. Volunteers were positioned strategically, and the children's movements were subtly directed. Some staffers noted that the sequence of events appeared to be repeated, almost like multiple takes of the same scene. It wasn't a regular visit, one insider said. It was planned down to the second, and you could feel the control in the room. These behind-the-scenes details painted a picture very different from the public narrative. While media clips showed cheerful interactions and smiling children, the reality included constant monitoring, subtle adjustments, and micro-directions to ensure that every shot was perfect.